Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister on Wednesday, the 13th of November, day 404 of the October 7th war. A couple of points from me and then we'll get straight to your questions. Let me start with the government's latest official data from the north of Israel. Since the start of this war, Hezbollah have fired more than 15,900 rockets hit Israel, have wounded 662 people in Israel, have killed 76 people here in Israel. They've burnt 230 million square meters of land. They've displaced 46,711 Israelis, evicted from their homes. Just yesterday, Hezbollah rocket fire killed Ziv Belfer, aged 52, and Shimon Najam, aged 54, in Nahariya, both murdered as a result of Hezbollah rockets launched from Lebanon. Near Haifa, the president remarked upon this in the Oval Office in his meeting with President Biden. A quick-thinking nursery school teacher moved the children in her classroom into a bomb shelter just as a Hezbollah UAV hit their kindergarten. She saved the lives of those children. More than 30 nurseries, primary schools, high schools have been hit in our north from Lebanon. Israel knows why we are fighting Hezbollah. We are often asked about the negotiations for a ceasefire, and it is true that the US and other countries are leading the negotiations to return quiet to our north, and our Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has talked about progress. But from Israel's perspective, the military campaign will continue until the immediate threat from Lebanon is removed and residents of our north can return safely to their homes in sovereign Israeli territory. Israel will not accept the existence of a terrorist military array on our northern border. We know what their intent is. It's to harm our people. Hezbollah's Conquer the Galilee plan, it made very clear an invasion and massacre on a larger scale than the October 7th massacre. Next, an update from Kogat and Israel's humanitarian work in Gaza. In the last 24 hours, 117 humanitarian aid trucks entered Gaza via Kerem Shalom, Erez, and the new Kisufim crossings. 32 of those trucks entered northern Gaza. The trucks carried food, shelter, equipment, medical supplies, including dialysis machines, and water sanitation equipment. The trucks arrived from Jordan, Egypt, and Israel. Only 41 trucks were collected from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom by international organizations. And once again, our daily reminder to those that say that not enough aid is getting in, 870 trucks worth of aid are simply waiting for collection. Maybe the UN doesn't know where they are. Well, they're on the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom crossing. You can't miss them. It's 900 containers worth of food languishing in the sun. Come and pick them up, United Nations. Deliver it to the Gazans in need. Do your job. You can bring your own truck. Israel will get them in. Maybe if you journalists attending this briefing will ask them about it, with your pressure, we can clear the backlog and aid those that need to get this aid. Also, a tanker of fuel and 6 tankers of cooking gas went in. Kogat facilitated an airdrop in southern Gaza of thousands of food packages. And a convoy of 30 trucks entered Gaza directly through Gate 96. A tanker of fuel went to northern Gaza for the refueling of essential infrastructure. And as usual, a rotation of humanitarian personnel has been successfully completed. Now, when it comes to bread, I've told you before that 12 large bakeries operate in Gaza, 4 in the north and 8 in the southern and central Gaza, producing 3 million pita loaves every day. And in preparation for the winter, the specific needs of the season are being coordinated, and Kogat is expanding humanitarian responses for the needs of Gazans of Gaza's civilians. Finally, before we take your questions, the Prime Minister last night made a direct appeal to Iran's people, to themselves, not the regime, to the Iranian people. Just last night, it's on the Prime Minister's website. The last message of this kind struck a chord with Iranians because it was viewed many millions of times within Iran. The Prime Minister revealed that the Khomeini regime, the last attack on Israel, cost Iran a whopping $2.3 billion. That is a phenomenal amount of money, $2.3 billion. The Prime Minister asked Iranians just to imagine what those funds could have done for the needs of Iranians in schools, in hospitals, in their aging infrastructure, in their creaking water infrastructure. The tyrants of Tehran obsess about destroying Israel, but as the Prime Minister said, that another attack on Israel would simply cripple Iran's economy. Iranians are not falling for it. Khomeini's regime seeks to divert their attention from Iran's real issues by attacking Israel. The Prime Minister painted a brighter picture when he said there is another way. So that's the end of our briefing here today. Now take your questions in the chat together with your news outlet. Okay, first question I can see here is from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. Could you comment on the nomination of Mike Huckabee as US ambassador to Israel, the first evangelical Christian in the post? Thank you for that question, Joel. Yes, indeed, the government of Israel welcomes these new appointments. It's clear that Mr. Huckabee, who is a very regular visitor to Israel, has a unique understanding of this country and the entire region, the challenges we face, the routes to peace, and what's needed to be able to get there. So these appointments are very much welcomed by Israel's government. Next question. There are reports that reservists are responding to call-ups less frequently than before. Can you describe the national mood here in Israel? Thank you for that question, Joel. Well, I will sum up the national mood with one word, and that word is determination. We are facing a vicious enemy, an enemy that seeks to wipe this country off the face of the earth, an enemy which has been coordinated by Iran, the tentacles of Iran. Our people have stepped up to the plate in the most remarkable way. We have made a lot of demands on our soldiers, our conscripted soldiers from our standing army, but also especially from our reserve soldiers. Some of them have served more than 100, sometimes 200 days during this war for our very survival, and they have flocked to support this country, and they continue to flock to support this country. Why? For the simple reason, as we say in Hebrew, Ein lanu eretz acheret. We have no other land. There is only one homeland for the Jewish people. It's right here in the state of Israel, together with the others who live here that wish to live with us in peace. And this country needs to be defended. When we see Israelis, when they see, you ask about the national mood, Joel, when we see the violence in Amsterdam, the repeat of scenes that we all thought were confined to the 1930s and 1940s, when we see the Jew hatred, when we see in European capitals and elsewhere in the US as well, we understand why this country, the successful continuation and the success of this country is so important. So the demands on our reserve soldiers have been very, very high, but our people have stepped up to the plate in the most remarkable way, showing sacrifice, which their families have felt, which their businesses have felt, which their jobs have felt, which their employees have felt. But still, we know we have no other choice but to defend this country and bring peace back to the region for a brighter future for all the people here in Israel. Next question is from Hannah Julian at the Jewish Press. Two questions. Can you comment on the release of a hostage video by the family of Alexander or Sasha Trufanov, 28, an Amazon employee who is being held by Islamic Jihad? And also, is there any information about any actions taken by Amazon to free him? Thank you for that question, Hannah. Well, I'll tell you how I'll answer that question. This is Islamic Jihad. That video shows exactly what Islamic Jihad is. We know that Hamas sits at the head of the terrorist organizations of Gaza, but Islamic Jihad also participated in the October 7th massacre. We know that they also stole our hostages as well and hold our hostages. Yes, indeed, Sasha Trufanov is an Amazon employee. The brutality of Islamic Jihad knows no boundaries. These are awful terrorist organizations and they are being defeated. When it comes to the negotiations to release our hostages, I can just repeat again that once again, as Jake Sullivan has reiterated, it is Hamas that continues to impose impossible conditions on their release. And the final part of your question is there any information about the actions taken by Amazon to free him? Indeed, Sasha is an employee of Amazon, and I do not have any information on actions by the management of Amazon to free Sasha. Next question is from David Clement from the News Forum. Antony Blinken has said that Israel has achieved its war aims in Gaza and should let the displaced return home. Does the Prime Minister's office have a response? Thank you for that question, David. Look, let me answer your question in this way. Our war aims have been very clearly laid out by the Prime Minister. They are, this war will continue until they're all met. The return of all of our hostages, 101 of them, and they have not yet been released. Now, they could be released this afternoon. Hamas and Islamic Jihad could lay down their arms and the war would be over immediately. The Prime Minister has said that. The second one of our war aims is dismantling of Hamas's governmental and military capabilities, removing the terrorist threat to Israel. Now, while it is true that we have shattered almost all of Hamas, the remnants of Hamas are fighting against us. They've regrouped in the north of Gaza. We have broken them in Jabalia, and we are taking apart the rest of their fighters, of their terrorist fighters, in other parts of Gaza. And we're doing that because, yes, of course, we want this war to be over as soon as possible. And when we think back to the Allies in Germany, the war against Germany, against the Nazis, ended when the Nazis surrendered. Not when every single Nazi was killed, but when the Nazis surrendered. Hamas have not surrendered. They continue to fight against us. Their objective is to harm our troops and also our civilians. They are continually trying to launch rockets or any other projectiles against our civilians. Our duty is to make sure that Hamas and other terrorist organizations do not threaten us again. And of course, the final war aim is to get our residents of the north safely back into their homes. Next question from David Clement. Does the PMO have a comment on Islamic Jihad video showing Sasha Trufanov? Yes, indeed. We've just given comment to a question a bit further up, just before David. Okay, I think that's the last question. Okay, my friends, thank you for joining us. Please join us again for the next briefing. Oh, there's another question from Fred Ager. And Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, in the video statement addressed to Iran's citizens this November the 12th, just yesterday, underlined that a third Iranian attack on Israel would cripple Iran's economy. Does this mean that the response from Israel would be to target oil facilities? Would Israel also target other energy facilities to cripple Iran's economy even more? Thank you for that question, Fred. Look, we are prepared for every scenario, both defensive and offensive. So in answer to your question, we are very closely monitoring developments from Iran and their proxies. And let's be clear, no one should be in any doubt that Israel will strike at anyone who acts or plans to harm us. Now, you're right, the Prime Minister made a lot of comments last night regarding Iran and that also that the Iranian people are as much victims. We estimate that maybe 70 or 80% of Iran's population are against that regime that persecutes women, that persecutes minorities, that does not allow freedom of expression. We've been very, very clear on that, and the Prime Minister made those points clear. But he reiterated that. Let me share with you what the Prime Minister's vision is, because we are dismantling the axis of evil that we face, this Iranian one, and they are calculated blows. We've made it clear that no longer will terrorist armies be on our borders. That includes Hamas, no longer in rule in Gaza, and Hezbollah will not sit on our northern border at positions that are just a few meters away from our border, which threaten us. They want to invade our country. This will not happen anymore. We're also severing Iran's, I'll get to the Iran itself, but we are severing Iran's pipelines of weapons to Hezbollah, which flow through Syria much of the time, and from there on to Lebanon. Now, when it comes to Lebanon, let me just say this, that 1701 and 1559 are UN resolutions. They only are only worth the paper they're written on if they are enforced. It's all about enforcement. So our security and the space between Israel's northern border and the Litani River, there needs to be that Hezbollah cannot be there, and that needs to be properly enforced. Now, when it comes to Iran, Israel has already struck its soft underbelly. I said yesterday from this podium that their vulnerability has been exposed. There are lots of haughty words from the Iranian regime leaders, but they cannot cover up the fact in Iran today that Israel has a greater freedom of action than ever before. The Prime Minister's made clear that we can go anywhere that we need to go in Iran. We do not wish this conflict against Iran, but we are defending ourselves. Now, the supreme objective that the government has set for the IDF when it comes to preventing Iran from attaining nuclear weapons is very, very high on our agenda. Halting the nuclear program has been, and it remains, our chief concern. We will not take our eyes off this objective. Now, obviously, Fred, you wouldn't expect me to share with you details, but we will achieve this goal. The Foreign Minister has made that clear. An Iran with nuclear weapons is simply not a reality that we are prepared to live with. Experience has taught this country and throughout history that when someone says that they wish to wipe this country off the face of the earth, they mean it. We believe them. Holocaust denial. They have a conference every year on Holocaust denial in Iran. There's a stopwatch, a clock which counts down the end of Israel in a square in Tehran. We know these things. We know what the objectives of Iran are, and we know precisely how to defend ourselves. Another question here from Joel Pollock at Breitbart News. There are questions that there are reports that Iran is reconsidering a third attack on Israel, in the hope of negotiating with the incoming US administration. Does Israel consider such reports credible? Thank you for that question, Joel. An Iran which is deterred from attacking Israel is a good thing. Let's be clear. Deterrence is always an extremely important aspect of any country's defensive posture, and it's no different for Israel. So an Iran deterred is most certainly a positive development. Okay, I think that is the last question now. Thank you for joining us here today. Please join us on the next one, and in the meantime, please do stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.